She literally swooped in out of nowhere, like, I was already halfway into the parking spot when this beige SUV comes flying in from the side and slips right into it like it was hers all along. I slammed my brakes, blinked in disbelief, and just sat there staring as she adjusted her mirror like nothing happened. I thought maybe she didn't see me, maybe it was an honest mistake, so I gave a polite little honk. That's when she looked right at me, smiled, and threw me a sarcastic little wave before stepping out of her car like she owned the whole lot. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't just idly circling. I'd been driving around the packed parking garage for 15 minutes, waiting for someone to pull out, and this was the only spot I'd seen. My back was aching, arms full of bags, and it had already been one of those soul-draining days where all you want is to get home and crash. So no, I wasn't in the mood to get bulldozed by a smug stranger who clearly thought rules didn't apply to her. I rolled my window down to say something, but she was already strutting off in heels, scrolling her phone like I didn't even exist. And just when I thought maybe, I should just let it go and find another spot, she turned around and said, "Better luck next time, sweetie," like some cartoon villain. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just about a parking space. It was about principle. She had no idea who she'd just messed with. But she was about to find out. At first, I thought, just let it go. Maybe karma would handle her. Maybe I'd find another spot a few floors up and this would just be one of those little moments I rant about to a friend later and forget by the next day. But then she did this. As I slowly drove past her car, still fuming, I glanced at her license plate to at least mentally curse it, just a harmless petty thing. But then I heard it. A loud, obnoxious laugh. Hers. I turned my head and saw her standing near the elevator, still on her phone, looking directly at me while mimicking the motion of reversing a car, like she was mocking how I lost the spot. And then, clear as day, she said into her phone, loud enough for me and everyone around to hear, "Some people really think they're entitled to everything." He looked like he was about to cry over a parking spot. She laughed again. And I swear, in that moment, something snapped in me. It wasn't just about the spot anymore. It wasn't just about the inconvenience. It was how confidently she dismissed my existence, turned my frustration into a joke for her amusement, and made me feel like I was the irrational one. She didn't just steal a parking space, she stole my dignity and treated it like entertainment. I circled the garage twice, trying to calm myself down, but her smug face kept replaying in my head. Each time I thought about letting it go, I remembered her words, the mocking tone, and the way she waved me off like I was some peasant inconveniencing her royal entrance. I finally parked 2 blocks away, in a sketchy corner with barely any streetlight, and walked back toward the building, every step heavier with a mix of rage and something else I couldn't quite name, maybe the craving for justice, maybe revenge. I spotted her again through the glass doors of the building's lobby. She was sitting in a plush chair, sipping from a Starbucks cup like nothing had happened, giggling at something on her phone, still talking loudly like the world revolved around her. I stood there for a moment just watching her, unnoticed, while a plan slowly started forming in my mind. At that moment, it wasn't even about retaliation, it was about balance. The universe needed correction, and if karma was too slow, maybe it was time someone gave it a gentle push. As I turned to leave, something made me look at her car again. That's when I noticed it, the visitor parking tag hanging from her rearview mirror. Our garage had strict rules. Visitor spots weren't supposed to be used for more than 2 hours at a time without registration. And if someone wasn't a registered guest or had no authorization beyond that limit, they could be reported. Towing was absolutely on the table. I felt a jolt. It wasn't just personal anymore, it was a technicality she clearly didn't think anyone would notice or act on. She thought no one would dare. That she could do whatever she wanted and get away with it. That's when the boiling frustration inside me started to cool, not because it faded, but because it was hardening into something sharp, focused, and deliberate. I wouldn't confront her directly. That's what she'd expect. She'd probably enjoy turning it into a public scene to make herself look like the victim. No. I'd do this quietly, cleanly, and within the rules. The system she thought she could ignore. I was about to use it against her. I went home, threw my bags on the couch, and sat down at my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second before I typed in the building's resident portal. I logged in, navigated to the parking complaints section, and opened the report form. I uploaded a photo of her car that I'd casually snapped earlier when passing by. Her plate number was visible, the visitor tag clearly displayed. I explained how she had parked in the spot illegally and had been there past the 2-hour limit. I also mentioned her behavior, how she'd mocked another resident and caused a disturbance. The more I typed, the lighter I felt. Like I was pouring every bit of frustration into this report. But I didn't stop there. I knew from previous experience that parking enforcement often took hours, sometimes even days, to respond. That wasn't going to cut it, so I made a call. I dialed the direct number of the towing company listed on the building's website and spoke to someone named Rick. I explained the situation calmly, professionally, and gave him every detail he needed. Rick said he'd send someone out within the hour. I didn't even have to wait long. Just 40 minutes later, I received a text from Rick with a simple message: "We got it. Thanks for the heads up." I grabbed my keys and headed back down to the garage, pretending to take out the trash just in case she saw me. And that's when I saw it: her spot was empty. No SUV. No visitor tag. Nothing but the clean lines of the pavement where her car used to be. The tow truck had come and gone like a silent ninja in the night. And she had no idea. Not yet. I stood there for a second, letting the silence soak in, feeling a strange calmness settle over me. The balance had been restored. But the best part? The real moment of satisfaction wasn't just that the car was gone, it was knowing that she'd come back thinking the world still revolved around her, only to find that her entitled little orbit had crashed. And that was exactly what I was waiting for. I wasn't just angry, I got calculated. You see, most people get mad, maybe rant to their friends or post a passive-aggressive status online. Not me. Not this time. Karen had pushed me far beyond petty irritation. This wasn't just about a parking spot anymore, it was about respect, about principle, about proving that people like her don't get to bulldoze their way through life without consequences. And so, what started as simmering frustration began evolving into something sharper, colder, more strategic. It wasn't enough to just confront her or ask nicely. That ship had sailed, crashed, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean the first time she gave me that smug smile as she walked away from her wrongly parked SUV like she was the queen of the asphalt jungle. No, I needed a plan. Not a messy, chaotic tantrum, but a masterpiece. A clean, lawful, utterly poetic payback that she wouldn't see coming until it smacked her in the face. At first, I did what any rational person would do: research. I spent nights scrolling through city ordinances, parking enforcement policies, tenant rights, and towing laws like I was prepping for the bar exam. I even printed a few documents and highlighted the parts that really mattered. I wanted to be ready for every "you can't do that" she might throw my way. I knew the building's property lines by heart. I measured the exact dimensions of our shared parking area and confirmed that yes, the spot she was so possessive of wasn't hers by any stretch of logic, it was shared, and technically, first come first serve. She had no leasehold right over it. That gave me just enough legal ground to move forward. And once I knew I was in the clear legally, I could get creative. That's when the real fun began. I started documenting everything. Photos. Dates. Times. I had a whole digital folder dedicated to Karen's parking offenses. I even named it Operation Get Karen. Every time she left her SUV there when she wasn't supposed to, click. Every time she parked crooked and took up 2 spots, click. I had images of her vehicle during the day, at night, in rain, in sunshine, like some twisted car model photo shoot, only with evidence as the goal. I wasn't just collecting receipts, I was building a case. And all the while, I played dumb. I'd smile politely when we crossed paths. I'd even wave once or twice. It was important she saw me as harmless, passive, not a threat. Because a Karen never suspects someone she thinks is beneath her. That was my greatest weapon, her own arrogance. But I didn't stop there. I made calls. I started casually chatting with the property manager, dropping hints, asking what-if questions. What if someone kept taking your designated spot? I'd ask over coffee. What if they did it after being told multiple times not to? I even got friendly with the local tow company. At first, they were skeptical. Towing from residential buildings is a gray zone unless you've got the paperwork lined up. But once I explained the situation and showed them the evidence, their tone changed. "Oh, we've dealt with people like her before," the guy on the phone said. "Let us know when you're ready. We'll be there in under 10 minutes. I saved that number under Karma Dispatch. Still, the setup had to be perfect. Timing was everything. I needed to catch her at the exact moment when towing would not only be possible but maximally inconvenient. I started tracking her schedule, not in a creepy way, just enough to notice patterns. She always left for her Pilates class around 9:30 a.m. and came back just after 11. She parked early, hogging the spot while she was gone. It was during those hours I could strike, especially on trash day when parking on the street was tight. One Monday morning, I stood near the window, sipping coffee like it was just another normal day, and watched her drive away like clockwork. That's when I made the call. I was calm. Collected. Even a little giddy. "You ready?" the guy from the tow company asked. "Born ready," I said. The truck arrived faster than I expected, rumbling down the street like a tank sent straight from the universe to deliver poetic justice. They didn't just tow her SUV, they handled it with clinical precision. No scratches, no dents, just a clean sweep. Her precious car vanished from that stolen spot as if it had never existed. I watched the entire thing from behind the curtain, heart thumping with adrenaline, a smile creeping onto my face. I didn't cheer. I didn't laugh. Not yet. This was just the setup. The real show was about to begin. Because I didn't just want to inconvenience her. I wanted her to feel it, to really feel it. That's why I picked the tow lot on the far side of town, the one with the worst reviews, the highest fees, and the longest wait times. I even checked to make sure it was open and functioning. The kind of place where the clerk doesn't look up from his sandwich when you walk in, and the paperwork somehow takes an hour even though your car is sitting right there. I chose that location for a reason: frustration. And I knew it would deliver. As the tow truck disappeared down the block, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't confronted her. I'd used the system she always thought protected people like her. I'd beaten her at her own entitled game. But the calm didn't last long, because now came the waiting. The anticipation. I paced a little, kept checking my watch, peeking out the window like a kid waiting for the ice cream truck. I knew she'd be back soon, and I had the best seat in the house for what was about to unfold. And when I tell you that the moment she turned onto our street was cinematic, I'm not exaggerating. But that's another scene entirely. Because the best plans are the ones that feel like fate when they unfold. And as her SUV-shaped entitlement vanished from that parking spot, I knew she would come back expecting the world to obey her. Only this time, the world had other plans, and I had set every one of them into motion. But oh, this wasn't the end. Not even close. Because a Karen doesn't take defeat lying down. And the moment she discovered what happened, I'd be there, not to gloat, but to watch the chaos unravel like a string pulled tight for too long. The real drama was just one shriek away. Her face when she saw the empty spot. Priceless. I don't say that lightly either, I mean it in the purest, most cinematic sense. The moment her car turned the corner and she slowed down, expecting to see her beloved SUV resting comfortably in the space she stole day after day, it was like watching a real-time glitch in the Matrix. First came the confusion, a tiny frown forming on her perfectly powdered face. Her sunglasses slid just a little down her nose as she squinted, leaning forward like maybe, just maybe, her car had shifted itself to the left or right without her permission. But no, it wasn't there. The space was clean. Too clean. Almost like it had been vacuumed by karma itself. She blinked twice, her brain racing to catch up, and then it hit her, the realization. That wasn't confusion anymore, it was horror. You could practically hear the mental gears grinding as she scrambled to understand how this could have happened. Her little entitled world had cracked open, and reality was pouring in like a flood. She parked her backup car, her husband's smaller sedan, half a block down in a no-parking zone, not even noticing the fire hydrant she was dangerously close to. That alone told me how rattled she was. She stormed across the street like a woman on a mission, hair bouncing, heels clicking like angry punctuation marks. I stayed hidden behind my curtains, heart thudding in my chest, barely able to hold back the laughter that bubbled up like a soda can that had been shaken too hard. I watched as she hovered over the empty spot, mouth opening and closing like a goldfish, then pulled out her phone with a dramatic flourish. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could guess. Something along the lines of, "Where is my car?" or "This is unacceptable," or my personal favorite, "I've been violated." She jabbed her phone so aggressively that I'm shocked her screen didn't crack, then spun around and stomped toward the property manager's office like she owned the building and everyone in it. That's when I knew my timing had been perfect. You see, I'd made sure the tow company provided a paper trail. They followed every legal step, left the required notice, even filed the tow with the city. There was no loophole for her to wriggle through, no technicality she could cling to while pretending to be a victim. The rules she'd ignored. They were now her downfall. I could almost hear the conversation inside that office, her voice shrill and indignant, the manager's voice calm and clipped as he pulled up the paperwork. I pictured her demanding answers, throwing around phrases like, "illegal," and "I'll sue," and, "Do you know who I am?" Only to be met with a neatly printed form with her name on it, time-stamped photos, and a polite but firm explanation that everything had been handled according to regulation. And then came the cherry on top, the moment she found out where her car had been taken. The lot I chose wasn't just any lot. It was infamous. 1-star reviews, surly staff, overpriced release fees, and a wait time that could make you age 10 years just standing in line. And it wasn't close by, either. It was clear across town, nestled in a dingy industrial zone surrounded by chain-link fences and broken streetlights. I knew it would eat up her entire afternoon and suck the entitlement right out of her. As I watched her storm out of the office, red in the face and flinging her designer purse strap over her shoulder like she was gearing up for battle, I couldn't help but admire my own handiwork. It was clean. It was legal. And it was devastatingly effective. But the story didn't end there. Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds quietly. Oh no, she needed an audience, and she needed revenge. That much became clear when she returned the next day with a printed sign taped to a wooden stake. I kid you not, she planted a sign in the grass beside the parking spot that read, "Reserved for Unit 2, trespassers will be towed." It was written in all caps like she thought yelling through typography would give her more power. I watched her hammer the stake into the ground with the determination of a medieval knight staking a claim on newly conquered land. The only problem? She didn't own the land. And more importantly, that spot was, and always had been, communal property. Now I could have taken the sign down myself, but I didn't. Why? Because I wanted her to take one more step, just one more miscalculation. And she did. Later that afternoon, she handed out homemade flyers to every neighbor in the building. Cheaply printed, a little crooked, with a big bold headline, "Parking Policy Violation Alert." In the flyer, she accused an unnamed resident of malicious behavior, abuse of system privileges, and unauthorized towing. She didn't name me, but come on, everyone knew. I mean, subtlety was never Karen's strength. But here's the kicker, her little propaganda campaign backfired. People were tired of her nonsense. One neighbor even taped the flyer back onto her own door with a sticky note that said, "This you, complete with a laughing emoji. What Karen didn't realize was that her meltdown was public now, and public meltdowns leave marks. Every tantrum, every exaggerated claim, every finger-pointing flyer, it all made her look more ridiculous than wronged. And when she finally retrieved her car, $400 lighter and with a bitter taste in her mouth, she started parking on the street like everyone else. For a few days. But entitlement is stubborn, and Karen doesn't know how to stay in her lane, literally or metaphorically. So naturally, she tried one last time to reclaim the spot. Late at night, I saw her slide her car into that space again like she thought no one was watching. Only this time, I was ready with cameras. Motion sensor lights clicked on. Click. Picture. Click. Another angle. The next morning, I submitted the photos straight to the tow company with the authorization already signed. Second strike. Tow round 2. This time, I didn't hide. I stood outside, sipping my coffee as the tow truck arrived. Karen came running out in her bathrobe, screaming that her rights were being violated. But the driver didn't flinch. "Ma'am, you're parked illegally," he said, pointing to the authorization form and the time-stamped photos. She looked at me with absolute rage in her eyes, but there was nothing she could do. Her car was hooked up, her voice was cracking, and for the second time in 1 week, her entitlement was getting hauled away on 4 wheels. It was glorious. But even that wasn't the end. Because when Karen couldn't win in the parking lot, she decided to escalate in the pettiest way possible. She filed a complaint with the HOA. Yes, the HOA she barely showed up to unless snacks were involved. She tried to frame me as a hostile neighbor, someone creating a toxic environment. She brought in her copies of the flyers, some blurry photos of the empty parking spot, and even tried to claim emotional distress. But what she didn't expect was how many people stood up and said, "Actually, we're kind of proud of how this was handled." Neighbor after neighbor backed me up. Some even shared their own stories of Karen's entitled behavior, how she once yelled at someone's kid for riding a bike too close to her car, how she monopolized laundry machines, how she hogged shared garden space like it was her private patio. It was like a mini trial and Karen was losing fast. By the time the HOA president looked at her and said, "There's no violation here except yours," her face had gone pale. She was outnumbered, outmaneuvered. And most importantly, out of excuses. She left the meeting in silence, and for once, we had peace. No signs. No flyers. No parking drama. Just silence. Well, almost. Because deep down, I knew she was still fuming. She wouldn't forget. People like Karen never do. But she also knew better now. She understood that there were limits. That entitlement doesn't grant immunity. That sometimes, the people you look down on are the ones who know exactly how to bring you down, by the book, with receipts, and just enough patience to wait for the perfect moment. So yeah, her face when she saw the empty spot. That was priceless. But watching her lose the war she started with her own arrogance. That was legendary. 10 miles away. $300 down. And the cherry on top. She had no idea who did it. That, right there, was my masterpiece. After watching her storm off with her poor husband looking like he'd just aged 5 years in 5 minutes, I went back to my evening like nothing happened. But deep down, I knew the real fireworks were just beginning. I checked the tracking update I'd set up with the tow company. Yes, I paid extra for notifications, because of course I did, and saw the timestamp of when they'd officially collected and booked her car. Legal, smooth, and entirely karma approved. Now all that was left was to sit back and enjoy the silence. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke up to a flyer on my door. Bright red, bold letters screaming, "Who towed my CR? I'll find you." I almost choked on my coffee laughing. She had gone full-on detective mode, printing out homemade wanted posters and shoving them into every crack of our apartment building. The woman was unhinged. She even included her number, daring the mystery criminal to come forward. As if someone would actually call and say, "Yes ma'am, it was me. Justice tastes better when served cold." I knew I had to be careful now. A Karen on a rampage is worse than a raccoon in your attic, relentless and loud. For the next 2 days, I laid low. I avoided the front exit, kept my windows half closed, and even had groceries delivered so I wouldn't accidentally bump into her in the parking lot. But then came the second part of my plan. See, I knew she wasn't going to learn anything just by paying a fine and driving across town. People like her need to feel it, deeply, inconveniently, and publicly. So, I talked to the property manager, sweet old Mr. Carlton, who was also fed up with her constant parking violations. I showed him the footage. Yes, I had security cam footage too, of her swooping into my spot multiple times, ignoring the clearly posted sign that said, "Reserved." He'd seen it happen but didn't know how bad it had gotten. After a quick review and a few polite nudges, he agreed. From now on, her vehicle would be blacklisted from all visitor parking zones. Not banned from the property, just forced to use her assigned garage slot. Inconvenient? Absolutely. Especially since she hated the tight squeeze of her own garage. But poetic? Completely. The following week, the ripple effect began. Word started spreading among neighbors about the towing incident. I never said a thing, but people aren't stupid. They put the pieces together. And soon, Karen found herself not only the center of ridicule but also the center of a kind of polite social quarantine. No one chatted with her at the mailbox. No one waved. Even the local dog walkers started crossing to the other sidewalk when they saw her coming. The community had collectively decided, we've had enough of Karen's drama. Her power? Gone. Her audience? Vanished. All she had left was that printed flyer, faded now, still taped to the lobby bulletin board like a sad trophy of her own downfall. And as if karma wasn't done yet, guess who got cited by the HOA for improper flyer posting and aggressive behavior toward neighbors? Yup, Karen. Another $75 fine and a written warning. Apparently, storming into people's apartments and pounding on doors like a SWAT team wasn't allowed. Who knew? When I saw her take the flyer down, her shoulders hunched like the weight of embarrassment finally hit her, I felt a strange mix of victory and pity, but only for a second. Because right as she turned to leave, she made eye contact with me through the glass door. And for a split second, something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition? Suspicion? Maybe. But I just smiled, nodded politely, and let the door swing shut behind me. Weeks passed. The tension faded. Karen's presence, while still dramatic, became muted. She no longer parked like she owned the place. She stopped yelling on phone calls in public. And once, just once, she even gave a mumbled "sorry" when she nearly bumped into me in the hallway. That's when I knew, sweet justice had been served. Not just through a tow truck or a fine, but through a quiet, steady reminder that she wasn't above everyone else. And the best part? She still doesn't know who played her like a fiddle. Sometimes, the most powerful moves are made in silence. And if you're still watching this story and you've made it this far, tell me, haven't we all dreamed of that perfect payback moment? The one where the rude, entitled person finally gets a taste of their own medicine. That's what this was. A slice of satisfaction, carefully prepared, served cold, and savored with every stunned expression she gave. If you enjoyed this story and want more wild, real-life revenge tales, crazy HOA showdowns, or just want to hear how ordinary people flip the script on entitled chaos, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications because I promise you, we're just getting started. And who knows, the next Karen story might just be about your neighbor.